We always wonder why a team like the mid-1980s Buffalo Sabres never won a Stanley Cup. Now, the 1983 campaign was a strong one for them. They came within one overtime goal of making the semifinals against the Islanders, and the Islanders were beatable at the time. They defeated Edmonton in the final, but they were starting to fade a little bit. Now, the Sabres of that year had a big victory in the playoffs, knocking off Montreal, and again losing the 7 games to Boston in a very hard-fought series. Kind of made the fans of Buffalo think they were going to probably do better in the 84 and 85. Never came about. But to me, it's one of the better teams not to win the Stanley Cup in the 1980s. Now, coached by Scotty Bowman, would get this Jimmy Roberts and Gordie Berenson as assistant coach, former players with Montreal. They were running on the backs of some really strong players. This was the year, of course, that Phil Housley and Dave Andreychuk, as 18-year-olds, made the squad. Housley, the sensation on defense from St. Paul, and of course Dave Andreychuk, the sensation from Hamilton, who put up 37 points in 43 games. Now, Gilbert Perreault was still there. He had 76 points to lead the team. Tony McKechnie, the very underrated sniper, 36 goals, while Dale McCourt, Mike Foligno, and Gilles Hamel each had 20-plus goals. Now, we're going to go over a little bit of the season, and it's kind of bizarre here. There was a losing streak for Buffalo during the campaign that really took away possibility of winning division. The end of the season, 38-29-13. Now, this was their 13th season in the NHL. Now, there were only 21 points behind Boston, despite Boston having 50 wins. There were some games against Boston could have gone either way, and it could work for the tiebreaker. Now, Montreal that year were deceptive. They had 98 points, but at 42, 24, and 14, they weren't as consistent they should have been. But really stood out for fans of Buffalo was the fact was they had some rough parts of the season, especially in October, and he really came back. Now, October was a very bizarre month for Buffalo. They lost 5 of their first 8 games to be 2-5-1. Now, what really hurt them, they lost back-to-back games against the Quebec Nordiques, home and away, 6-4 in the early part of the season. Then he played the Flyers, Chicago Blackhawks, and Detroit, and they were getting no momentum. Well, a turning point for the season, a lot of Buffalo fans say, was a 7-7 tie, an old Firewagon hockey game on the road against the Montreal Canadiens that really showed Buffalo could still bring on the offense. And from there, the rest of this October, November was the way they worked it. They were holding their own with Montreal, defeated them at home on the famous Halloween night victory in '82. But again, it was back and forth all season. Now, the big problem was the doldrums from Buffalo in February. They lost 4 straight games between February 6th and February 14th, and they were blown out in each game by Boston, the Kings, the Flames, and the Blues. Now, the Ides of March got them as well. They lost 4 games on a Western road trip that really put them out of the first place possibility. And a big loss as well was a defeat by Montreal in the Forum on March 20th. So March was a terrible month for Buffalo. They had lost 7 games from March 8 on, where if they would have won any 3 or 4 of those games, they would have passed Montreal in the standings. Now, as luck would have it, they faced Montreal in the first round of the series, and of course this really shook up Montreal fans. Montreal was expecting to have another battle against the Quebec Nordiques, but the Nordiques had their hard time with the Boston Bruins, who won the first 2 games at the Garden. Even though Quebec won Game 3 2-1, Boston won the Game 4 to take it 3-1. Now, Buffalo against Montreal. Montreal had no offense at home. They were outscored 4-0 over 2 games, and Bob Sauvé and the troops of Bowman had a good defensive effort. Montreal had some offense in Game 3. Of course, this was a loss that caused a complete dismantling of Montreal's coaching and player staff, which also led to Steve Penny getting a number 1 start for Montreal the next season. Now, they went on to face Boston in a very controversial series, because if you look at the rough stats here, people would say Boston and Buffalo were basically, there was no defense in the series except for Game 7. Buffalo won Game 4 7-4 at the Garden, while the Bruins won Game 2 5-3. Now after the Sabres took a well-deserved 4-3 win in Game 3, Boston put on the offensive burst. They won 6-2 at the odd in Game 4 and 9-0 at home, which is one of the biggest playoff wins for Boston in its history. And I watched that game, and all I can say is Buffalo gave up by the middle of the second period. Now, they went back to Buffalo, and at the odd, Buffalo, in a big shocker, won 5-3. Now, Game 7 went back and forth, and this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen. I saw it with my own eyes. Brad Park had an opportunity to put the puck in the net. He got a rebound, knocked a slap shot, and within 2 seconds after the first rebound, the puck was in the net, and boys, the Garden went ecstatic. Now, what was kind of weird about this, the conference finals, Islanders were hard pressed to beat Boston. The series was tied 1-1 after the first 2 games in the Garden, and Boston had won Game 5. But what helped with the Islanders to really put on the offensive show at Nassau Coliseum, the Bruins had no response to the fan base cheering on the Islanders. Actually, the Islanders, 3 wins at home, they scored, at Nassau, they scored 23 goals against an embattled Boston team. Now, the Sabres that year had a very interesting mix as well. They had some veterans, and of all people, they were trying to put Phil Mayer in net for a few games, but Jacques Cloutier and Bob Sauvé shared the battle of the pipes. Sauvé, and probably his best campaign, went 25-20-7, and Cloutier was 10-7. Now, offense battled over defense for Buffalo. The majority of the players of the team were in the -1. Now, what really stood out for a lot of people was the young defense that Buffalo had. The young Mike Ramsey, the Olympic champion, had a good season. He was plus 20. Henry Verta, the Finnish sensation, had 37 points, including 13 goals. A young and very rugged Lindy Ruff did well, and the veteran John Van Boxmeer was sort of the quarterback. But the big, tall drink of water from Fort St. James, Larry Playfair, had a good campaign as kind of the enforcer, and of course the very underrated Bill Height, the pride of Ryerson, did quite well as well. Now, it was weird about Buffalo that year. No Robert, no Richard Martin, but Perreault was still the great playmaker. But to see the young Mike Foligno do well, and Dale McCourt as well, gave a lot of people hope. Now, Andre Savard had his typical, 40-point season, but Anderchuk and Housley weren't the superstars they were a couple of seasons later. But to see them at such a young age, and Housley was pretty well the defensive quarterback for the team. Now, if you were a Sabres fan at that time, you know it was a team in transition. Craig Ramsey was pretty well on his last great season, and again, they tried different players from the minors as well to work it out. But like I said, there were maybe 1 or 2 players away for a strong Stanley Cup run. But I really think when he knocked off Montreal, it changed the whole thing, because if Montreal would have won 1 game in that series, maybe there wouldn't have been that rebuild. And the 86 Cup and the 89 championship run towards the Stanley Cup, where Montreal didn't win, is always a lot to the way Buffalo put their shit kicking defensively on them in the playoffs. And to be humiliated by the former Montreal head coach Scotty Bowman at the Forum really, put him in a rough stead. Now, we're talking about the draft that year. That was probably one of the best Buffalo drafts in history. Now, Phil Housley came from South St. Paul High School in the United States high school system in Minnesota. And, of course, Anderchuk was... Would you believe Anderchuk was not even a top 10 pick, ladies and gentlemen? 16th overall from the Oshawa Generals. That was a steal like you wouldn't believe. But that was a really good draft for Buffalo, just to get Housley and Anderchuk. And I know, although Anderchuk didn't stay with the team for the rest of his career, the ripples of that draft for Buffalo paid dividends for years. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're a Buffalo fan, the 83 season is kind of a head-scratcher, because you look at those bad stead in the regular season. You could easily win 45 games and won the division, but the loss against Boston in Game 7 in overtime just broke a lot of Sabres' hearts. And it's too bad because, ladies and gentlemen, I think they would have bet the Islanders. Because Gilbert Perreault, it could have been one of his last kicks in the can at a Stanley Cup. He would have brought it. But like I said, Boston at the time, they were scoring a lot of goals or giving up a lot of goals, not too much defense. Or as I call my old interviewee from years ago, Rick Middleton, he called that probably the most inconsistent year Boston had because too many highs, too many lows makes you cripple mentally. Like the Islanders really were built to beat Boston, but were they built to beat Buffalo? Yet to be determined. Thanks for listening. Bye.